Okay, you can go ahead and start the meeting now.
All right, good afternoon and welcome to the LAVTA Finance and Administration Committee meeting on August 24th, 2021. And under the Governor's Executive Order N-29-20, this meeting is utilizing teleconferencing to protect the health and safety of staff, officials, and the public. There are multiple ways that you can participate using Zoom or in particular phoning in, which are on the agenda. And so with that, I'll call the meeting to order and ask for a roll call, please.
Director Hernandez? Director Hernandez?
Oh.
Hi, I'm here.
Okay, Vice Chair Narum
I'm here.
and Chair Kick is not in attendance today.
Okay, so that's quorum. Thank you. Do we have any members of the public that want to speak on items not on the agenda?
We don't have anybody in attendance at this meeting today, and I didn't receive any comment via email.
Okay, great. Thank you. So let's move on to item number 4, minutes of the June 22nd, 2001 Finance and Administration Committee meeting. And I will seek a motion for approval.
I will move approval for the June 2022 meeting, please.
Okay, and I will second that. And all those in favor, or let's get a roll call vote, please.
Director Hernandez,
Yes.
Vice Chair Narum,
Yes,
and Chair Kick is not
That
here.
passes.
Motion passes.
great, thank you. And then let's move to item 5, the treasurer's report for June 2021 and July 2021.
Okay, let me first just start by apologizing. Today's meeting is going to be a lot of me talking. So I didn't realize I was like the entire agenda, so I'm sorry. So
You are the finance executive, right?
yes, it's just sometimes other people get to talk too. So the June 2021 Treasurer's Report is not our final Treasurer's Report, just because that'll come after the audit. This is a preliminary Treasurer's Report. We do not have everything in yet. We are still waiting on some things. But it looks like based on the original budget that we brought kind of pre-COVID, our expenses should come out about 85%, while our revenues are, actually, no, I'm sorry, the Treasurer's Report's off the newer one. The revenues are at 140%. So we're going to have quite a bit due back to the LTF. MTC has told us that because for FY22 on our claim, we drew down everything we had in reserves, that they do expect us to return some money to the LTF this year. They are only requesting that we return this year's amount of due to LTF, and they're not requesting the other stuff that we've been holding on to help us with the parking garage and other projects. So I'm expecting that amount to be a little over 6 million-ish. We'll see when we get those final numbers. The CAFR will be brought to you, excuse me, they changed the name. The ACFR will be brought to you in October, I believe, to the committee in October. And that will have all the final numbers and the audited information. And then there will also be, the auditors are also doing the rail audit. So you'll see that as well, since you're both on that. The July Treasurer's Report is exactly the opposite. Our expenses are higher than our revenues. We only have 0.2% of revenues in, because all we really have is the fare box money. We don't have any of our allocations or anything. But in terms of the spending being higher than the revenues, that's normal in July and usually August as well. But that's why we have money sitting in our LAAF. We will be fine in terms of cash flow. I think that's it for the Treasurer's Report. Any questions?
Melissa, Melissa, do you have any questions?
I do not have any questions right now.
And it looks like Brittany just joined us.
Okay,
Hey, sorry, I was running a little bit late. Is Kathy leading?
I am.
Do you mind continuing the rest of the meeting, or you want me to jump in?
No, I'm happy to do it, whatever you'd like.
Awesome,
It's
that would
fine
be
with
great.
me.
Thank
Okay.
you.
You're welcome. So Tamara, I assume that with the July report and the numbers, even though they're opposite what you'd like, that this is typical or you're comfortable, or it's not a red flag to you?
It's not 100% typical. Well, it is for July. Normally we would see revenues coming in August. We won't be seeing them till probably September, possibly October. But because we have that money that's due to LTF, we have that, almost $20 million. I'm not worried about the cash flow.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
If we did not have that, it would be a concern. Way back in the day when we did not have reserves and we did not have money on hand, it was a problem. We had years where we could not pay our bills in July and August. But that's when the board set the policy to maintain 3 to 6 months in reserves so that our money usually comes a little earlier.
Great. Okay. Thank you. So I guess I need a motion to forward these two reports to the board for approval.
I'll move.
I'll
Great.
second.
Thank you. Any more discussion? Not hearing it. Can we get a roll call vote, please?
Director Hernandez,
Yes.
Chair Kick,
Yes.
Vice Chair Narum,
Yes.
passes unanimously.
Great. Thank you. So let's move to item 6, the DBE policy revision. And Tamara, is that you again?
It is. It is. I am the Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Liaison. And back in 2012, we revised our DBE policy and submitted it to the FTA. And in 2014, to the day, they kicked it back and said they wanted a revision. It was a small revision on the the Small Business Administration portion of it. So we resubmitted in 2014 with board approval. And in 2019, they finally reviewed it and they gave us a concurrence letter. However, last month we had our FTA triennial review, which is an intense review, and we'll be bringing it to the board in October. But it goes over 21 different areas of the agency, and DBE is its own area. In their review, they caught that what we submitted in 2014 had not been signed by our executive director at that time, who was not Michael. So I couldn't run down the hall and have him sign it real quick. So they said, oh, in addition, there's a couple other things that need to be added. So they didn't give us a finding for that. They said, we're sure your board's going to approve it. We're not worried about that. If you can get Michael to sign it, we won't give you a finding. So that's easy enough. I literally ran next door and had him sign it. Added the revisions, the 2 little things that they wanted added, very minor things we were already doing, but weren't called out. So this is really just a formality to resubmit it again. And maybe before I retire, it will have a concurrence letter. It's the goal.
Okay. Any questions? Director Hernandez,
I have no questions.
you want to make a motion?
I will go ahead and make a motion.
I'll
Okay.
second.
Okay, I'm sorry, Brittany, I'm assuming you don't have any questions.
Nope, I'm good. I'll second.
Okay, thank you. I do have one question. It's on page 3 of the document.
The
And I
policy.
was surprised when it refers to, we're not going to discriminate on race, color, national origin, or sex, that religion was not part of that. And, I'm not an expert on this, so I'm trying to look at this. It looks to me like the government doesn't require religion, if I'm reading this correctly. Is that correct?
Well, they don't. But the other thing is that when you're looking at a DBE, because we could have our policy where we said, based on a disparity study, that we want to target women-owned businesses or African-American or whatever. The DBE does not track businesses based on the religion of the owners. So there would be no way to differentiate what that is.
Okay.
But yeah, it's not part of the DBE. Religion's not part of the DBE at all.
Okay, interesting. All right. Well,
Yeah.
with that then, unless there's no other questions, can we get a roll call vote, please?
Director Hernandez? Director Hernandez?
Looks like she just dropped off.
Yep. Vice Chair Nera
Yes,
and Chair Kick?
Yes.
She's still not in the meeting right now. I guess when she pops back in, we could go back to that if you want.
okay, sure,
Okay.
great. All right, moving right along for item 7, consideration and approval of the establishment of a California Employers Pension Pre-Funding Trust Account with CalPERS. Couldn't get that all in one breath.
The title of the resolution is even longer, but I didn't want to put the whole thing in there.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was hard enough typing it. It has been brought up a number of times in this committee about possibly establishing a 115 trust fund for our pension liabilities. We've done some research. The expected rate of return on these investments by investing through pension, not only does it pay down our pension, which benefits in the long run, but putting it there rather than putting it in our LAIF account, the expected rate of return is much higher than LAIF, and LAIF is much higher than keeping it in reserves at the county. So we are looking for permission to, one, establish said trust. One of the, I guess, two of the really nice things with the trust is that if the agency, is investing in this way and then later on runs into an issue, we can actually remove money from it if we needed to, if we were, some major recession hit. So it is very flexible in that way. They do require us to determine how we want it invested. There's 2 options. And they do require us to tell them how much we're going to do as the initial deposit and what we anticipate to do for the next 2 years. The funny thing with that anticipated the next 2 years is you can give them a number, but they don't hold you to it. So there's a lot of flexibility in this. As I researched it, I was much more comfortable knowing that there was flexibility with it. We already contribute to OPEB. We have actually quite a bit of money in our other post-employment benefits invested similarly with similar rules. So we're looking to establish this. The agency, as you know, has quite a bit of money in reserves, but it's sitting in LAIF. And then when we have to send it back to the county, like I said, the return is even less than LAIF. It's crazy low. It was not in this year's budget. So I'm looking at an initial payment, and we can change this if the committee thinks we should, of $100,000. Any money we put in here does get counted with expenses, and it does get counted with like our cost per revenue hour and that sort of thing. So it's something to keep in mind that, even though we have 5 million we could put in, we may want to do it more slowly. My thought is that we come to the board every year with the budget with the recommended amount and get it approved as part of the budget going forward. But this year, this would be separate. The other thing I included in here were the actuarials. I didn't mean to include all those pages, just the front page. But they released a new actuarial when I was out of town last week. So we swapped them out. And that shows our unfunded liability annually. And our unfunded liability annually for the non-PEPRA employees is over 100,000 a year. So this, by investing this way, that will bring that down. But since we can afford it, at least initially, until something crazy happens, I'd like to continue paying that amount in addition to investing this amount, if that makes sense. I don't know if I'm explaining that right. So in addition to approving this, I would like the direction from the committee on what you think the best way to invest it is with the 2 options that they present, and what your feeling is on the amounts each year. Just since I have to tell them what we anticipate the next 2 years. The other thing is in addition to approving the CEPPT, for the purposes of free funding. We also need an authorization for the executive director to execute the required documents for the participation. There's a whole bunch of paperwork that goes with it, but none of it's complicated. So, okay, I think I talked enough.
Okay, Director Kick, you've got your hand up. Do you have a question?
Yeah, I
Sorry.
think I'm remembering this correctly. This is something that you brought up, Kathy, and asked staff to look into. Am I correct?
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
you are. And
Yeah, I was just saying, wanted to say that I'm excited to see this come back, and I'm excited that it ended up being good financially. So thank you, Kathy, for bringing that up, and thanks, Tamara, for doing the work to figure out how to make it happen. I think this is going to be a good use of our time and money. So unless there's any other questions, I would make a motion to approve. I do not have a suggestion on what direction to go with money, and I think maybe Kathy might have some better input on that.
That was kind of my expectation.
yeah. So, Melissa, do you have any questions?
Yeah, no, I just want to thank Kathy for bringing this forward and to be able to just expand on, what's being brought forward. So I appreciate it, Tamara. I always appreciate your hard work putting into, everything that you do for us. So definitely, I will second. I'm sure Kathy's going to have or want to add a little bit more towards this.
Yeah, thank you. So my first question, I think you kind of touched on it, but it sounds like you're picking this route versus a 115 trust.
This is a 115 trust. It's just with CalPERS.
Okay, versus
We could go through
doing an RFP with one of the agent, one of the investment houses.
No, this administratively, this is the easiest way for us to go because we've already got the OPEB and everything else set up through CalPERS.
Okay.
We could go that route if you'd like.
I just have a little discomfort, giving CalPERS more money than necessary. I mean, their track record is kind of all over the map. But at the same time, the amounts that we're dealing with here are quite a bit different, certainly with what Pleasanton's dealing with. And, I guess I have to admit, I don't know about Livermore and Dublin. So in the scheme of things, it's, it's an order of magnitude difference. So that may make sense. A question, I didn't see anything on policies or when we would take the money from the trust. Is that something that you envision doing, assuming we approve this and set this up?
Yeah, that would definitely have to come back to the board separately. Under what conditions we would remove money from the trust. They'd probably be similar to what we have. Actually, I don't think our OPEB policy has that. So we should probably establish it for both because OPEB has that option as well. But I'm pretty sure that policy does not have anything in there. I think back when we set it up, we anticipated we'd never, ever, ever need to do that.
Right.
Yeah, it was before 2009. So yeah, that's something that we'll definitely need to set up once we kind of figure out what direction we're going with this.
Okay. I mean, I would be welcome to get the Pleasanton policies, just as a idea, not to say that's necessarily appropriate for LAVTA, but at least to see sort of what the thinking was behind it.
Yeah, that'd be a great place to start.
Yeah,
I'm going to be honest. I, stole the resolutions and staff reports from other cities as well. So
I call that being smart.
Yeah.
And then just a question. I noticed in here that if we were to prepay the 2022 unfunded liability payment, the additional payment, that we would save $4,000 or so, it looked like. Is that something that you would plan to do? Or, I didn't actually get a chance to do the math.
On the unfunded liability, we pay that every single year.
Right, but it says in here, if you pay it, I think in July,
right,
you get a discount.
Right, we've already paid it for this year.
Okay,
We pay it every year in July. We just, you can pay it in portions. But because we have all that money sitting in the bank, it's just easier to pay it all at once, take the discount and be happy. Yeah.
right. Well, I'm glad to hear that, actually. So in terms of the 100,000, one of the, I guess the question I have is, looking out 5 years or so, it gives you the payment schedule for the additional payment for the unfunded liability. And I
Mhm.
was wondering if you are able to do like a cash flow projection to see if you're able to handle that payment every year, or go at it a different way and say, if we put in, I'm just going to pick a number, 250,000, and we assume a certain rate of return, we'll be able to make up any gaps as we go forward with taking money out of the trust, or with the money that's earned
Mhm.
in the trust.
I can do that. We're working on a short range transit plan, which is going to have our 10-year financial projections in it in terms of revenue. And that will give me an idea of what kind of cash flow we're going to have over the next 5 to 10 years. And I can incorporate that into this and kind of figure out. We have a consulting firm that's going to be doing the projections on the economy and that sort of thing, what kind of revenues we should be expecting.
Great. I knew you'd be on it.
It's a little behind schedule. It was actually supposed to be done a while ago, but COVID. So
Right. Not to mention all the stuff with the schools and
yeah,
everything else. So for me, it's a little hard to say if 100,000 is the right number without sort of seeing a little bit of a cash flow projection, and how, if we're able to handle that additional payment each year as it increases.
Mhm.
I mean, but I certainly think 100,000 is a good place to start. My sense is maybe we might want to do a little more, but I didn't realize that then becomes part of our expenses, which
Mhm.
doesn't necessarily, it's the right thing to do, but it doesn't necessarily, how do you say it, look good, if somebody just kind of peering in and not understanding what we're
Right.
doing.
Right. And like I mentioned, so if we say we're going to do 100,000 to open it, we can commit to 100,000 for year 2 and year 3, but they don't hold us to that. So it's not really a commitment. It's more, I guess, of a statement. So I thought it was kind of odd that they don't hold you to that, but I do appreciate it. So
in other words, if you do your cash flow and you come up and it says, gee, if we had 175,000 in there, we think we'd be good. We only put 75,000 in the next year and call
exactly, we could change it. We
Good.
could go back to them each year. You have to tell them how much you're putting in this year.
Okay. All right. All right. Well, I appreciate you bringing this back. I think it's the right thing to do. I think it's, having some foresight, a little more long range, and how to deal with the unfunded liability. I was also, if I read this correctly, dumbfounded that the PEPRA is also developing an unfunded liability, although not nearly as big, but the whole point of that was to pay as you go. And
Right.
that's not working, but that's not happening. So I hope that they're able to get that straightened out, because we're trying to dig out of the hole, not, dig another hole, which is what it seemed like. So, okay. So I'm sorry.
So also funding strategy. There's the two options. One's higher rate of return, but higher risk. So I wanted to kind of gauge what the committee's risk tolerance was. Mine's very low. So
Okay.
let's see how others felt.
So let's do this. Let's vote on the motion just to establish the fund and forward it, and then we'll come back, in part 2 here and have that conversation. So any other comments, questions?
I'll move the first motion to forward this to the board.
Great. And I think Melissa seconded that.
I will second.
Okay, so can we have a roll call, please?
I will second.
Great, thank you, Melissa.
Director Hernandez,
Yes.
Vice Chair Narum,
Yes,
Chair Kick.
Yes.
So Kathy, did you want to go back up to agenda item 6, the DBE policy revision, to get Melissa Hernandez vote on that?
yes, thank you.
Melissa, can you vote on that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Great. All right, then let's take up the second piece of this, which is how to invest the 100,000 in the conservative or the more moderate. Any thoughts on that?
I honestly would do the more conservative.
Same. I'm also risk averse.
Yeah, I agree with that. If it was a larger amount, I might suggest peeling off a piece of it in the more moderate, but I think given the 100,000 at this point, the conservative is the right way to go. Myself, and you know, next year when we put in, let's say we put in another 100,000, maybe you take 50 and make it moderate, depending on, you know, where things are. So, Brittany, you want to do another motion?
Yes, I move that we go with the conservative route this first time around, and we can come back and have conversations after we see how this goes.
Okay,
And I will second.
great. Could I ask for a friendly amendment that part of the motion include that we ask Tamara to bring back policies for taking money out of the trust at a, you know, later meeting?
Yes, please add that to my motion.
Thank you. Melissa, are you okay with that?
Yes, I'm okay with.
Okay, thank you. All right, let's have another roll call vote, please.
Director Hernandez,
Yes.
Vice Chair Narum,
Yes,
Chair Kick.
Yes.
Motion passes.
great. Thanks again, Tamara. I really appreciate you taking a look at this because I know it does involve work, just judging by all these these stack of paper. Okay, so let's go on to the executive director's report and let Tamara have some water.
Thank you.
Everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. Well, listen, this is the executive director's report that I anticipate putting in your board packet for the September meeting. There were a couple of items that dealt with funding, so I thought I'd just include in the F&A packet so that you could be briefed on the outcomes of the funding and what we've been up to as far as the asks that have been made. And then I think I saw Tony as well on the meeting. And so, you know, the big, certainly the big push around the agency over the last 6 to 8 weeks, and probably even beyond that, has been the triennial audit that Tamara spoke of. And pretty excited about the outcome of the audit. And as she mentioned, you'll be seeing that in the near future with a briefing from on just the 1 or 2 findings that were in that audit. And then the other audit that we've gone through lately is the CHP audit. So each year they randomly, literally just come in and take a look at buses, take a look at personnel files of the drivers, look at drug and alcohol records. And so we received recently that audit, and the outcome was the highest rating that's available from the CHP. So in combination with that, the schools were coming back into session, and certainly if you have any questions about school service and how that's gone, I would characterize it as going very well. Tony's here and he can chat with you about that. We have a new service out where students and parents can receive text alerts based on the performance of the bus route. So if it's running behind, they can receive notices. That's in the report, but really what I wanted to focus on with the F&A is just to confirm that in July, MTC programmed over $5 million for LAVTA in this American Rescue Plan Act, which is the funding that we had asked for to fill in gaps in our fiscal year 22 budget. and also partial gaps, I think, as far out as 2023, depending on kind of how 2022 goes. So that was really good news for the agency. If that would not have happened, we would have been talking to you about potential changes in the service plan to better accommodate the funding that we have. We're also geared up, ready to receive funding on the shared autonomous vehicle project that's in Dublin. A little bit of information in the packet about that, but if you serve on ACTC, it's a heads up that an RM2 request will be flowing through the PPC, the Program and Policy Committee, and then on to the ACTC board in regard to our shared autonomous vehicle project and phase 2. And then finally, you've probably been seeing in the media, but there certainly has been movement with the Senate passing recently the historic infrastructure bill. And we've been following that really closely. They'll go through the reconciliation process with the House to get a final infrastructure bill. But that, as of now, that has some really nice increases in public transportation formula funding, which will come through and into LAVTA. So that's very helpful looking forward. It's probably the best optimistic news we have moving forward with, certainly with public transit and with LAVTA. And then the final thing I just wanted to get in your hands as early as possible and not really wait until the board meeting is that APTA, the American Public Transit Association, has their conference coming up in November. It's their big conference where they award the Transit Agency of the Year and lots of other awards. We received that Transit Agency of the Year last year, but they didn't have the conference. And so in person, so this year is the year that the agency will actually be recognized at a conference in person. And then there's also some other grand prize AdWill or marketing awards that'll be given to the agency. So if you're interested in going to that conference, I put a link in this executive director's report. It's a fun time. It's a celebratory time. It's in Orlando. I'm not quite sure how this COVID situation really plays out. And so it's obviously dependent on how that's playing in November. But we did reserve money, as you'll recall, in your current budget to be able to have a few of the board members go back to that APTA conference. And so if you're interested, we just wanted to make sure you got the information as soon as possible, and would be happy to help schedule, the hotel and the registration for you if you'd like to go back.
Great. Thank you. Any questions for Michael? Brittany?
I don't have any questions.
Bummed. I would love to go to that, but still not quite ready for an airplane yet with my comfort level. So I hope that it goes well.
Okay. I would just like to comment to Tony, I think the new text alerts for the students taking the bus to get to school is fabulous. I think that really addresses that unknown is, did I miss the bus? Is the bus late? That uncertainty, an easy punch in a few numbers and, be able to find out. So I really appreciate you doing that. And then on the shared autonomous vehicle, on the Pleasanton side, we've got a BART station and a business park. And I just was wondering at what point this is going to carry over to trying this in the Pleasanton Business Park with the nice wide streets and the BART station. And it really seems like a logical place to be trying this.
Yeah, it's a really good question. And there's, in addition to Hacienda, there's, Las Positas College, which is certainly a potential for a project. There's the labs in Livermore. So there's lots of potential to expand the program. This is the last phase of the demonstration project there in Dublin. It'll include getting that project into passenger service with 3 SAVs to have the higher frequency so that it's as convenient. as we can get it. They say when you get to 15-minute service, which is what you need to pulse with BARD, then it becomes scheduleless. You don't necessarily need to keep a schedule in your pocket. So I guess the long story short is this demonstration project in Dublin had a couple of different phases. This is the last phase. And then from there, we hopefully have learned how to have a successful project. And we can simply duplicate this in Hacienda and duplicate it in other parts of the service area, depending on how the board wants to take it. So, you know, I would say that we have learned a lot in phase 1, and we'll learn a lot in phase 1.5 and 2.0, which this is teeing up funding for that last 2.0 phase. And I would think within probably 8 months to a year of having been in phase 2, we're going to be really comfortable about just duplicating this in other areas. So that's been staff's plan, and certainly if the board wants to revisit that, we can revisit that. We've been just moving along trying to figure out if we could get this project to where we felt really comfortable carrying passengers and then start duplicating it.
Okay, if you were going to duplicate it, is there funding available? Or do you have an idea in your mind where you go to get the funding, or is that something we have to go get grants or?
So I think for the capital expenditure of the SAV projects, the funding's fairly readily available through either ACTC or MTC, and really then it boils down to how you handle the operating funds. It would be considered a route since it'll be carrying passengers. It'll be just like any other route in the system where you would want to measure its performance and duplicate it as you feel the need. I think this is where your additional federal money coming down the pike with the infrastructure bill and the new transportation bill, having additional funding in the formula funding will help the agency, get up and going some of these projects.
Okay, all right, thank you. Any other questions for Michael? Okay, moving on. I think we saw the preview of the upcoming committee agenda items. And are there any thoughts on that? I'll take that as a no. So any matters initiated by committee members? Okay.
I have no matters taken.
Great. And then the next meeting is scheduled for September 28th. I don't know if that's virtual or not, but I, at least at this point, have airplane tickets and will not be in town, although we are questioning whether we're going to make the trip. So I'm hoping that I can, Zoom in, or if it is live, or do we know yet on the live versus virtual for the meetings?
I think we've been just having a lot of discussions internally and haven't felt totally comfortable about in-person meetings yet, not knowing who might come in for the meetings. So we've been kind of on the conservative side and envisioning that maybe perhaps at least in September we continue with the virtual meetings. I think the governor, his authorization to have the virtual meetings, I think expires like at the end of September. So we'll probably look for further guidance from the state in between now and then, but hadn't planned on September being in person.
Okay. So I can be wherever and join. All right. Any other comments, thoughts, Brittany?
Yeah, I just had a comment. I was riding the bus, had a suggestion, reached out to staff, and immediately they're just on top of it as usual. So just wanted to give them a public shout out for improving some signage to let people know that our bus drivers have masks available in case they forget. And so good job, Wheels. I appreciate you.
Great. Melissa?
Nope, I just want to say thank you to staff as always. Thank you, Kathy.
Yep, thank you. So this meeting's adjourned then. Everybody have a good rest of the week.
Yeah.
Thanks for jumping in for me, Kathy. Appreciate
You're
it.
welcome, Brittany.
Thanks, Kathy.